Even the moon's frightened of me. Frightened to death. The whole world's frightened to death.
Well, ladies and gents, it is finally October, meaning it's Halloween time. And you know I had to make a spooky video for the season. So in today's video, or tonight's, as due to this being kind of like a spooky video, I would recommend watching it at night. I'm gonna be taking a look back at one of the best horror characters, that being Griffin, or Jack Griffin, or what he's most well known as, the Invisible Man. Oh yeah. Now, to give this video a very specific timeline to follow, what I'm going to be doing is discussing, firstly, the original Invisible Man story by H.G. Wells. Then I'll get into the Universal movies, as those are what he is mostly well known for. The Invisible Man himself is in the public domain, so obviously he's going to have a lot of random appearances. So I'll keep this pretty straightforward. This is a video I have wanted to make for quite a while, and I have a feeling it's going to be a good one. So let's just get right into it. The Invisible Man first appeared in the 1897 book of the same name, which was written by H.G. Wells. And if you don't know who that guy is, he wrote a lot of books about science fiction stuff. Most notably, he also wrote The War of the Worlds. He's a very famous author. I would be kind of surprised if you have never heard of him before. So I went ahead and read the Invisible Man book for the video. Yes, I actually did that, which is something I can't say I've ever done for any other video. Read a book. And I gotta say, it was pretty good. It's just a good short, spooky science fiction story. I'm gonna give a brief rundown on the book. I'm gonna keep it very brief, as the movie from 1933 is not only better, I feel, but also it's just going to be more interesting to watch, as I can show clips. You can't show clips from a book. I'll have no background footage, but since I want to talk about the book a little bit, I'm going to be beautifully illustrating the story for you. So the story begins with this weird, mysterious guy who's referred to as the Stranger for about half of the book, and he shows up in the village of Iping, where he checks into the Coach and Horses Inn, and quickly draws attention to himself. As he stays there over the next few days, he draws attention to himself because, first of all, he's just kind of like a weirdo, and also his appearance is very odd, and then the rest of his body is heavily clothed. His entire actual body is hidden, so no one knows what he looks like. But then after getting tired of being bothered all the time, the Stranger takes off his bandages and reveals himself to be invisible. There's nothing underneath his bandages or his clothing, and then he escapes town after the town constable tries to arrest him. He then forces a homeless man named Mr. Marvel to help him out with his shenanigans. But Mr. Marvel, after a while, realizes that he despises the gig, and even though he is threatened by the Invisible Man, he tries to escape him. And funny enough, he also steals the Invisible Man's books, and he runs off to a tavern, where the Invisible Man follows Marvel to and then gets injured at, after he gets into a scuffle with a few guys, while he was trying to catch and kill Marvel. So now that the Invisible Man is injured, he goes off to Dr. Kemp's house, who is an old acquaintance of his, back from way before he became invisible. So here the Invisible Man reveals to the reader and to Kemp who exactly he is. His name is Griffin, and he's a scientist who discovered a way to make blood transparent, and then he learned how to make tissue transparent. And after testing it on a cat, he used it on himself and became invisible. So now Griffin wants Kemp to help him, in beginning a reign of terror as he describes it. But Kemp has no interest in doing this, and he secretly called the police chief on him, who arrives to arrest Griffin. But Griffin escapes again and causes more trouble. He shoots the chief, and then he tries to strangle Kemp. But in the end, he gets caught by a mob, who beat him up, and Griffin eventually dies from his wounds, with his body slowly becoming more visible as he dies. So there was your brief recap on the book. I did not go over everything, and I would just say read it yourself if you have time. When it was released in 1897, it was pretty successful, especially with the general audiences. It was just, you know, a pretty good short story. Now, talk to adapt the story into a movie began after the release of the movie Dracula in 1931 from Universal. The movie was a hit financially, so the folks at Universal were like, let's make another spooky movie. So the Invisible Man story from H.G. Wells was put out there as a possible follow-up for Dracula, but the idea was put on hold, since, you know, making an invisible man was gonna be kind of difficult, and would take more time and effort. So instead, Universal decided to go forward with the movie Frankenstein, because of, like I just said, they thought that the Invisible Man was gonna be too ambitious, and also due to Universal simply thinking that Frankenstein was a better choice overall. But while Frankenstein was being made, Universal went ahead and bought the rights to the Invisible Man from H.G. Wells for $10,000, which, adjusting for inflation, would be about $215,000 in today's money. And along with The Invisible Man, Universal also bought the rights to the story The Murderer Invisible. The idea in the beginning was to essentially combine the two. Universal would take the more violent parts from The Murderer Invisible and then put them into a movie loosely based off of its plot called The Invisible Man. And then with that name, they could also attach H.G. Wells' name to the movie, even though it was not going to be a direct retelling of the book. Now, when Frankenstein proved to be an even bigger hit than Dracula, The Invisible Man was put into production, with James Whale set to direct, who also directed Frankenstein. And then Boris Karloff was going to play The Invisible Man, and he was the one who played Frankenstein's monster in Frankenstein. What'd you think? He played him in Dracula? Originally, Universal wanted Whale to do a sequel to Frankenstein, but he wasn't too interested in that. Apparently, he was not a big fan of making sequels, so he instead pushed for the Invisible Man movie to be made, as it was a spooky-related property, and Whale was hoping that it would get the higher-ups at Universal off his back about making a Frankenstein sequel, but that did not last, as James Whale left the project a short time later, as he did not want to only be a horror movie director, and wanted to do other things. He didn't want to be stuck in that genre, and also the early scripts for The Invisible Man were a total mess. And this would begin a very long process of trying to get a good script for the movie, and also keeping a director and starring actor. It was a disaster for a while. After Whale left, up next to direct was Robert Florey, and then Garrett Fort would write the script. And these two, with their script, leaned mostly into The Murderer Invisible for the plot of the movie. And this movie sounds like it would have been crazy. I don't know exactly how these points would have been implemented into the plot, but apparently, it would have included invisible rats that would have been sent out to spread the bubonic plague in Manhattan. There would have been an invisible octopus. I wish I knew what his purpose was, that seems very random. And also, Grand Central Station was going to be blown up. But this version of the movie was, never made. Then another script was written by Preston Sturges, and this one had the Invisible Man be created by a Russian chemist who turned a guy invisible and made him get revenge on some Russian Bolsheviks who killed the chemist's family. And this was a very weird plot idea. It had nothing to do with the Invisible Man or the Murderer Invisible. And with this version of the script, James Whale actually was going to come back and direct the project. But when Preston Sturges turned in his script to Universal, he was, fired the next day. So clearly they were not a fan of the script. After this, it was James Whale's turn to make a script, and this one was also not accepted, as H.G. Wells himself said no to its approval. As one of the stipulations, with Wells giving Universal the rights to make an Invisible Man movie, was that he wanted final script approval. And this was because another one of his stories, The Island of Dr. Moreau, was adapted in the Paramount movie The Island of Lost Souls, which was a well-received movie and considered good by pretty much everyone, except Wells, who thought it was too different from the source material and the story he was originally trying to tell. So when it came time for the Invisible Man movie, he wanted final approval on the movie script. So after Wells rejected Wales, I just realized those names sound really similar. Okay, so after H.G. Wells rejected James Wales' script for the Invisible Man movie that he was going to direct, James Whale left the project again for a second time. Then E.A. DuPont was going to direct, and John Weld was going to do the script, but nothing ever came of that. This movie's early production was a mess, but finally, a writer and director were chosen, and they stuck around this time. The script would be written by R.C. Sheriff, and Universal told him to take inspiration from The Murderer Invisible, and also from the other failed scripts, but Sheriff was like, no. And he based it heavily off of H.G. Wells' original book, which is probably what they should have did from the beginning. Now, regarding the director for the movie, coming back to the project for a third time was James Whale, who stuck around this time. And when Sheriff presented his script, H.G. Wells okayed it. So finally, the movie can begin getting made, right? Well, no. Not quite. Because, by this point, Boris Karloff, who was gonna star in the movie as the Invisible Man, left the project. So there was now no lead actor, meaning a new one had to be found. The second choice after Karloff, for which actor should take on the lead role as the Invisible Man, was Colin Clive, who played Dr. Frankenstein in Frankenstein. Now with him, he was interested in the idea, but apparently he wanted to go back home to England, so he did not do it. So now there was, no one in mind for the role, until an actor who was pretty much totally unknown unknown was discovered, that actor being Claude Rains. Rains was discovered by James Whale, and apparently the story goes like this. Rains had auditioned for a role in a movie, and apparently ended up being a disaster, and was not a very good audition. But somehow James Whale overheard the recording of Claude Rains' audition, and Whale immediately knew that he found the guy for the leading role in his movie. Rains just had such a unique and perfect voice for the role, although there was some pushback, as Rains had only ever appeared in one movie before The Invisible Man, and apparently was not that great of an actor, but Whale knew that that voice was just too good to pass up on. Another issue was that Universal wanted a known actor for the role, instead of a guy no one had ever heard of, but nevertheless, Rains was selected for the role. There was a specific emphasis on trying to find the perfect voice for the Invisible Man, as since the character would either be covered up or just straight up invisible for the entire movie, the voice for him was the most important part. And I'll get more into this in a moment when I talk about the actual movie, but I do not think they could have gotten a more perfect actor for the role. Claude Rains was an unbelievably amazing pick, and I guess I'll just talk about the movie now, as there's nothing really to talk about regarding the filming of it, right now at least. If there is a certain scene I'll want to talk about in deeper specifics, I'll just do that when I get to it. So the movie begins with this strange fellow here, traveling in the snow, where he heads to the village of Iping, and there he checks into the Lion's Head Inn, where inside it is quite the lively place. There's jokes, there's games, there's music, but all of that comes to a halt when the weird guy from earlier walks in and wants a room with a fire.
I want a room and a fire.
So Miss Hall then gets him his room and prepares it for him.
Could I take a coat and hat, sir, and give him a nice dry in the kitchen?
No.
This scene made me laugh when I first saw it. I did not expect her to make that face directly at the camera. Downstairs, the guys from earlier are all talking about how the man upstairs in the room is very suspicious, and they all immediately jump to the conclusion that he's a criminal. Then Miss Hall brings the strange man some food, but she forgets the mustard. And this is the scariest thing in the movie so far, when you order food and they forget to bring you something. Truly terrifying. So Miss Hall goes back upstairs to give him the mustard, where she is met with quite the odd sight. The guy has his head completely wrapped in bandages, which she apparently did not notice before.
I told you not to disturb me.
It's only the mustard, sir. I forgot it.
Thank you.
So Miss Hall gives him the mustard and goes back downstairs, where she immediately begins to gossip. And it turns out the guy upstairs is invisible. He's some kind of invisible man. Oh yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Then we cut to a scientist guy. Who the heck is this? Well, this is where the movie takes some creative liberties from the book. This is Dr. Cranley, and this is his daughter, Flora. And she is upset because her fiancé, and also Dr. Cranley's employee, Jack Griffin, went away to do some science stuff and has not returned yet. I wonder who this Jack Griffin character could be. If you're wondering what this Griffin character's job was under Dr. Cranley, it was apparently about researching how to preserve food. Then in walks Dr. Kemp, who also works for Dr. Cranley, and he doesn't seem to be too worried about Griffin's disappearance. He's more so just annoyed that he had the nerve to leave, but Flora is extremely worried about him. I like this scene here. The camera follows Flora as she goes into another room, and Kemp follows. Why is there a door here? Kemp then tries to comfort Flora in the best way he knows how. He starts touching her and says Griffin has abandoned her.
He cares nothing for you, Flora. Please, darling, let me tell you how I feel.
Oh, leave me alone! Oh, can you?
Yeah, nice going there, pal. We then cut back to the strange man. You know what? No. This is Jack Griffin. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. I'm not gonna even pretend I don't know who this is. I'm not gonna call him the stranger the entire time until it's revealed. So Griffin in his room at the inn is doing some science stuff when he is soon interrupted by Mrs. Hall, who brings him some food. But she can't take a hint that Griffin does not want the food, so he has to tell her in a more, direct way.
And the whole day's work ruined by a foolish ignorant woman.
So Mrs. Hall has had enough and tells her husband, Mr. Hall, to kick Griffin out. When Mr. Hall tells Griffin to get out, Griffin pleads with Mr. Hall to let him stay, saying that he's had an accident and needs to be left alone so he can fix it. But Mr. Hall tells Griffin to kick rocks, so Griffin gets enraged.
Leave that alone and get out of here!
Just listen to that voice. That's what I was talking about earlier. Claude Rains just has such a perfect voice for this role. It's immaculate. So Griffin kicks Mr. Hall out of the room by throwing him down the stairs, and that is not only disrespectful, as this is Mr. Hall's establishment, but it's also a crime. Griffin has now committed assault. So this guy, Constable Jaffers, is called to arrest him, and this guy is just baked out of his mind or something. The way he acts is so funny.
What's all this?
It's the stranger with the goggles. Nearly killed her husband.
Huh?
He's homicidal.
Oh.
When Jaffers goes to arrest Griffin, he finally snaps after being bothered all the time. And you know, I can see where he's coming from. So Griffin then takes all of the bandages off his head to reveal he's invisible, in a really good effect for the time. Now you may be wondering, how was this pulled off? Well, the actor for the Invisible Man, Claude Rains, would film a scene with his head wrapped in a black velvet face covering, and he would act out the scene on a black velvet background, same color as the wrapping on his head, and somehow they would remove all of the black from the scene. In this case, that would be the head and the background, and then overlay the headless body on the wanted background that was called for the scene. Now I don't know how they removed the dark colors and then overlaid them on the correct background, but it was pretty much just like a green screen. It's very impressive for the time, and still holds up quite well, I'd say.
You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? I'll show you.
So after Griffin scares everyone off, Jaffers gives some insight as to what they just saw.
He's invisible. That's what's the matter with him.
Is that so? Then in an attempt to catch Griffin before he escapes, Jaffers and his squad go back up to his room, where Griffin is nothing but a shirt. Then after some chase shenanigans, Griffin goes full invisible, and he tells everyone how he got this way, but not too in depth. He just says he injected himself with a few chemicals.
An invisible man can rule the world. He can rob, rape, and kill.
So Jaffers and his guys try to arrest Griffin, but he's too sneaky for them since he's invisible, and he escapes, where he begins to unleash chaos on the town, and it's the most comedic chaos ever. He doesn't even do anything crazy, he's just a jerk.
I'm afraid I need this bicycle. Here's your blooming bicycle. How's that for a hairbrush, George Henry?
Then we cut back to Dr. Cranley and Dr. Kemp, who are trying to find clues as to where Griffin could have went. Sadly, there's nothing too interesting in that regard, but Dr. Cranley learns that Griffin was messing with a drug known as monocaine, which apparently draws the color out of whatever it touches. And when it was used on a living creature, it not only turns them pure white, but also makes them go mad, explaining why Griffin is so crazy for. Then we follow Kemp home, who's just chilling out, but he is soon interrupted by his colleague, Griffin, who reveals to Kemp that he is now invisible. Man, it's kind of hard to tell he's here because he's fully invisible, but look, who else could do this? Griffin wants to have a little chat with Kemp, but Kemp is too freaked out by having a conversation with air, so Griffin gets dressed in what is probably his most iconic look in the movie, with the bandages, glasses, and robe. So now that Kemp has a tangible guy to talk to, Griffin explains why he turned invisible. He explains at first it was done out of just doing something no one had ever done before, but then he realized that with his new powers, and also that monocaine that makes him crazy, he could make the world grovel at his feet, and he wants Kemp to help him with his reign of terror.
We'll begin with a reign of terror. A few murders here and there. Griffin, for heaven's sake! Do you want me to take these off? No.
That out of context is hilarious. He's just threatening him with stripping down. So Kemp is disturbed by what Griffin wants to do, but since Griffin threatens Kemp, he has no choice but to comply. So now they're a duo, and for their first mission, they go back to the inn and get Griffin's books that he left behind. At the inn, there's a little meeting being held where this police chief guy does not believe all of this talk about this invisible man, and after Griffin gives Kemp his books, he kills the police chief guy for, no reason. Then Griffin and Kemp escape back to Kemp's house, where Griffin gives more detail to Kemp as to what his new job is going to entail, which includes fun things like wiping his feet. Then Griffin heads to bed after telling Kemp goodnight.
Good night.
How sweet. I am sure that these two will always be friends. Then we get a really neat scene of Griffin unwrapping his head bandages in front of a mirror, which was accomplished by filming and then combining 4 different scenes together. This was also the most difficult scene to film for the movie. So firstly, you would film Griffin removing the bandages against a black velvet background, and then under his bandages you would once again wear that black velvet mask, and then you would film the background by itself, and then you would film the reflection of Griffin removing the bandages against the the black velvet background, and then you would film the background you wanted for the mirror. The just genius effects in this movie can mostly be attributed to John P. Fulton, and also his team that helped him with all this. The effects that he was able to pull off for this movie in 1933 are just amazing. So after unwrapping, Griffin heads to sleep, and while he sleeps, the local police are making a plan to catch him. They have all their boys on the case, and while Griffin is sleeping like a baby, Kemp is not, and he is freaking out about his current plight. So he locks the door and calls Dr. Cranley to help him out, and I'm sure Dr. Cranley will come running. This is about his daughter's missing fiancé. I mean, surely he's gonna be there immediately.
It's Griffin. He's the invisible man. He's killed a man tonight. I shall come in the morning. I trust you, Kemp.
He just hung up on him. He was very nonchalant about that. You'd think that he would be more, urgent, maybe? Thankfully, Flora overhears her father's conversation and convinces him that they probably should go, like, right now. But Kemp thinks no one is gonna come and save him, so he calls the police and snitches. But, Griffin then comes downstairs and questions what Kemp is doing, and Kemp just says that he was scared. So he came downstairs and locked the door to, like, hide or something.
There's no need to be afraid, Kemp. We're partners, bosom friends.
Ah yes, that is very reassuring. Then before Griffin heads back to bed, he sees that Flora and Dr. Cranley have arrived. And it turns out he just completely forgot about these two, and he wants to see his fiancée. So Griffin then gets some alone time with Flora, where he explains why he did what he did. And he says he did it for her, as he apparently had nothing else to offer her, and he wanted to do his invisibility experiment stuff for riches and fame.
I had nothing to offer you, Flora. I was just a poor, struggling chemist. The nations of the world will bid for it, thousands, millions.
But Griffin and Flora's reunion is cut short after the police that Kemp called earlier arrive. So Griffin bids Flora farewell and then strips down, going full invisible. But before he exits the house, he gives Kemp a warning.
As surely as the moon will set and the sun will rise, I shall kill you tomorrow night. Help! Help! He's here!
And even though there is an army of cops outside, Griffin gives them the slip, then does whatever this is.
Here we go gathering nuts in May on a cold and frosty morning. Whoops!
So now that he's free, Griffin just goes and commits a bunch of crimes for no reason. He kills these guys here who are looking for him.
Here I am. Once you pleased, you found me.
Then he knocks out this signalman guy, and then derails this train, which ends up killing 100 people. Wow, a bit over the top, don't we think, Griffin? Then he steals a bunch of money from a bank and just dumps it all over the sidewalk.
A present from the invisible man. That's the way the money goes. Pop goes the weasel. Money, 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 money!
So while all this is going on, the police are at Kemp's house, making a little plan with him. They know that Griffin wants to kill Kemp, so this is their only chance to draw him out. They're gonna use Kemp as bait. Here's the plan. They're gonna walk with Kemp down to the police station and lure the invisible man there, where a bunch of police are gonna be waiting for him. Then Kemp will sneak out the back, drive home, then get in his car and drive far away. So the plan seems to go off without a hitch at first, and the police are waiting for Griffin to show up, but he never does. It turns out he knew about the plan and followed Kemp the entire time. So now he and Kemp are alone. What? No. It's not going in that direction. But before Griffin kills Kemp, he insults him a bit. He really does not like this guy.
Well, goodbye, Kemp. I always said you were a dirty little coward. You're a dirty, sneaking little rat as well.
Then Kemp gets the craziest death of the movie. It's just so incredibly over the top, it's kind of funny. And since Kemp was the goat of this movie, I think it's only fair we take a look back at some of his best moments.
He cares nothing for you, Flora. Please, darling, let me tell you how I feel.
Oh, leave me alone! Oh, leave me alone!
Monocaine? What is monocaine? I never heard of it. Sit down! Don't stare at me, you fool. Look in front of you. Come on, get a move on.
What was that screaming?
Bill, the stupid little policeman, smashed his head in. The invisible man is in my house. Sleep upstairs. Hurry. Help! Help! He's here! You mean you're going to use me as a bait? Yes. I can't. Don't be a fool. It's all a mistake, Griffin. Let me be your partner. Griffin, I'll do anything. Everything you ask.
beautiful. So after Kemp is killed, the police have quite literally no idea how to catch him. But the Invisible Man finally slips up. He takes a nap in this barn, and this old guy sees him. Okay, he doesn't really see him because he's invisible, but he hears him snoring, and he alerts the police, who surround the building and then set it on fire. And when the Invisible Man comes out, they simply shoot him. Now this scene here is pretty neat, with Griffin leaving footprints. And this was done by dropping blocks of wood out from under the floor, leaving holes that looked like footprints. Then we cut to the hospital, where Griffin's reign of terror is finally put to an end, as he dies, with Flora by his side.
I knew you would come to me, Flora. I meddled in things that man must leave alone.
And just like in the book, as he dies, he slowly turns visible. And there you have it. A pretty extensive rundown on the movie's plot. And I gotta say, very good movie. I know that's a pretty normal opinion to have, but I would absolutely recommend it. When it was released in 1933, it was immediately praised, and the reception was great. In particular, everyone really liked Claude Rains in the movie, and this was more than likely the first time anyone had ever heard of him, since this was his American film debut, and James Whale was praised for his role in directing the movie, and also the special effects were praised, which, like I said before, for the most part still hold up to this day. The movie had a budget of $328,000, which, adjusting for inflation, would come up to about $8 million. Now, I would give you the box office amount, but for some reason, it's not documented. But whatever that number may have been, it was high enough for Universal to consider it a massive success, both financially and critically, like I mentioned before. And it was such a big success that it got quite a few sequels, and this is one of the just weirdest series of sequels ever. The genres are all over the place. Now, I'm very briefly going to talk about these movies, like very briefly, more so than the book earlier. And for total transparency, I did not watch these sequels. I only read the book and then watched the original movie twice. I just don't have time to watch 7 movies. Believe me though, I would if I could, but I really don't want to delay this video for the sake of me watching 7 movies when my thoughts on them really don't matter. This video was mostly made just for me to talk about the original movie though. And hey, if any of these sequels interest you, you can always just go check them out yourself. Anyways though, tangent over. The first sequel to The Invisible Man was released in January of 1940 and was titled The Invisible Man Returns. And that title is pretty much just clickbait because the original Invisible Man, Jack Griffin, is not in this movie. Instead, the Invisible Man is this guy here named Jeffrey Radcliffe, and he was falsely accused of murder. So he and his friend, Frank Griffin, who just so happens to be the brother of the original Invisible Man, come up with a plan to turn Jeffrey invisible while they try to prove his innocence. But that bug in the monocane is still present, as it will make the taker of it go crazy. So it's pretty much a race against the clock to find a cure for the invisibility and also clear Radcliffe's name. In the movie, the Invisible Man was played by Vincent Price, which is kind of funny to literally no one else but me, because before making this video, whenever I was thinking about making it, I could not for the life of me remember Claude Rains' name, and that he played the Invisible Man in the first movie. For some reason, my mind was thinking Vincent Price played him. Literally no idea why. So I just find it funny I was thinking that whenever he did play him, just in the sequel. And The Invisible Man Returns, with its budget of $244,000, made $815,000. And it seems like it was pretty well received, critically and just with general audiences. So the next movie in the Invisible Man series is where things start to get kind of odd, as this one was just a straight-up comedy, not spooky at all. This one was titled The Invisible Woman, and was released, only 11 months after the last one, in December of 1940. And as the title suggests, the Invisible Man is now an invisible woman named Kitty Carroll, who was played by Virginia Bruce. Here, there's no liquid or like chemical concoction that makes the main character invisible. Instead, Kitty Carroll is turned invisible by this machine this professor guy made, where there's also no craziness side effect, so somehow that got worked out. So when Carol is turned invisible, she pranks her terrible boss at her department store model job, and then when some gangsters try to steal the professor's machine, she stops them. It's a completely humorous movie though. There's never really anything at stake. And with its budget of $270,000, it made about $650,000. Reception-wise, there was nothing crazy, just a pretty good comedy movie, but also nothing groundbreaking. The next movie in the series is probably the most just unexpected direction to take the series in. The Invisible Man in this movie is named Frank Griffin, played by John Hall, and he is the grandson of the OG Invisible Man. Don't know when Jack was building up his family, but sure, whatever. And Frank here takes the invisibility serum and uses it during World War II to fight and, pretty much just prank Nazis. In case it wasn't obvious, this movie released right in the middle of World War II in July of 1942. Reception-wise, it was pretty average, nothing crazy, but with its budget of $322,000, it made $1,040,000. Now with the next entry in the series, yep, we're still not done yet, the series went back to the spooky genre with The Invisible Man's Revenge, releasing in June 1944. And here the Invisible Man, strangely enough, was played by John Hall, again. And here the Invisible Man is named Robert Griffin, but strangely enough again, no relation to the OG Griffin. So here Robert Griffin is just a crazy guy who gets turned invisible by a scientist, and he gets revenge on this family for not sharing a diamond he helped them find, hence the name of the movie. But at the end of the movie, he is killed by a dog. Sure, why not? Now this movie seems to have been received quite negatively, but with its budget of $314,000, it made $765,000. So after this movie, the series then jumped back to comedy with Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man. Yes, this is considered part of the Invisible Man series. So in this one, which released in March of 1951, Lou and Bud help this boxer dude named Tommy Nelson, played by Arthur Franz, find out who killed his manager, as the boxer guy has been framed for the murder, so they have to figure out what really happened. And the boxer is turned invisible by his fiance's uncle, who is a scientist, to help out with this mystery. Now, funny enough, this was not the only time Abbott and Costello met the Invisible Man, as they also met him at the end of the movie Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, where the Invisible Man was played, or I guess voiced, by Vincent Price.
Who said that? Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man.
Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, with its budget of $627,000, made $1,500,000, and seems to have very high reviews. Now from Universal, that's all we got from them about the Invisible Man, in like movies and such, for quite a while. But the character of the Invisible Man, as you may know, has grown into its own thing since then, kind of like Frankenstein's monster or Dracula. Those guys are just iconic, and appear in stuff not related to Universal at all, since they're all in the public domain. But in 2017, Universal was planning to reboot their movies about their classic monsters that was going to be known as their Dark Universe, and that included the Invisible Man, who was going to be played by Johnny Depp in a movie. But after the poor release of The Mummy in 2017, plans for all of that were totally scrapped. But in 2020, we did get an Invisible Man movie from Blumhouse and Universal, which was a complete overhaul of the original story. It was a more modern version, where instead of a scientific experiment that turns someone invisible, it's this like high-tech suit. Now in 2025, regarding appearances of Universal's Invisible Man, I believe he has only had two notable ones this year. The first one being a new comic book series for him, which is pretty cool, and the other is that he is a walk-around character at Universal's Epic Universe theme park. That's not too interesting for a final appearance, but look at this costume. It's pretty great. I bet the guy wearing it is unbelievably hot in those face wrappings. Now, while the Invisible Man's future is unknown, the Universal version of him is going to be entering the public domain in 2029, so any part of the character that was not in the original book, like him being named Jack, for example, is going to be free for anyone to use. And there you have it, a very extensive look at the past of Universal's Invisible Man, and also their best monster, easily. Now, if you did enjoy this video, a subscription, a like, and maybe even a comment would be greatly appreciated. This was a very fun video to make. I've wanted to do one on the Invisible Man since last year. Anyways though, with that, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.